So get this, podcast listeners, from Caucasian to Asian, transracial is a thing. So what is transracial? Well, the normal version of trans, as I always thought, was that it was a guy wanting to become a woman or a woman wanting to identify as a guy. And they either just dressed that way or they went through the whole surgical thing, right? And these two guys deal with this subject matter on their respective committees. So we don't want to get too much into the science part of it and the political part of it, other than the fact that there's a new trend and it's transracial, namely that you want to become a different race. So there's this guy in England, he's Caucasian because he's English, and he wants to become Korean. So what he did was he decided to get a whole bunch of surgeries. And one such surgery was to pull his eyes back so that he looked more Asian. And I guess in his view, more Korean. This was him, by the way. All right. This is what he wanted to do. So we have a series of clips on this, and we're going to have some fun with this subject. Here is clip number 1.
So I am going to come out today and say that I've been transitioning. I've been very unhappy with who I am deep down for the last 8 years. And I've had like 18 plastic surgeries now. And I've just had a facelift, a brow lift, a temple lift, an eye surgery, a canthoplasty, and my teeth done as well. These are just part of my transition.
So he's had all of those surgeries. Did you hear that? He had his teeth done, and I'm not sure why that would make him, or what makes you more Asian with your teeth, but he had his eyes done, his temple done. I think he said his cheeks. What else did he say? It's like one other thing
because
there.
we brought it up earlier. I think his GPA automatically went up because he's Korean now.
Yeah.
Well, was he North Korean or South Korean?
If he's North Korean, he's got to get shorter. South Koreans are about a foot taller than North Koreans.
That's
was it
true.
because they're healthy?
That. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right. Because they're healthy, because of capitalism.
That's right.
And then, maybe a schmeckle reduction. I'm not really sure what else was done there too.
Yeah. I mean, can you be...
We're not touching that.
No.
Well, I mean, what did he look like after the knife surgery? Like, can you be halfway through your transitioning?
It's
like he went 18 surgeries. That's a lot.
That's
there.
a lot of surgeries. And by the way, once again, podcast listeners, he just wants to become Korean. He's Caucasian, right? So we went from men wanting to become women, women wanting to become men competing in women's sports, to now a guy who wants to become Korean because he's Caucasian, because he doesn't identify with his race.
So in his plan here, I got a lot of questions. I just love to interview this guy. Maybe bring him in here after this.
That'd be a great
because
podcast.
was it like one surgery and then decided to have another surgery and then another surgery? Or was this the plan from the beginning? Like, I'm going to have 18 surgeries and I'm going to identify as Korean at the end of this. I mean, does he need like a 19th or 20th? Because at some point, I got to feel if somebody walked into a doctor's office, there's a thing called moral hazard here from the medical professions, and I can't believe
That's
they
a good point.
even took the time to actually do this. I kind of feel bad for this guy.
Yeah, what
he
doctor
obviously has something wrong with him.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a mental health issue without question. What kind of doctor? The doctor has a mental health issue too to allow this to happen.
Right. To keep performing these surgeries on this guy, he looks freakish.
So apparently,
and as we know, the doctors have a board that they're supposed to answer to. And this guy obviously sat down and said, we're going to start these surgeries here and we're just going to keep going. I mean, they have to oversee, somebody has to oversee this, because I think the doctor is definitely is complicit in this as the patient is. Because obviously he said, I don't like the way that I feel, the way he feels, which has nothing to do with his outward appearance. So I don't think he's ever going to be able to fill this void. And I think he should have been maybe referred to a mental specialist to begin with.
Absolutely.
To see if he's really ever going to be able to.
Absolutely, he should have been. But the concerning part from a society point of view is like, we're putting this guy out there and like, look, you can be, change. And it just has a bad impact, I think, on youth.
Right. You can be whatever race that you want to be. And you can get life-changing surgery to do it, I suppose. I mean, it's kind of gross.
So we have a magic man-woman machine, and now we have a magic, race changer machine.
Right.
Yes.
So nobody's really got a true identity.
That's right. So here's the next clip where this gentleman, this Englishman says that he wants to be known by, I guess, Jimin, among other things, and kind of describes it a little bit more in detail. We have that clip, and here it is.
I'm feeling really good. For the first time in my life, I feel beautiful. I'm looking in the mirror and I love the way I look and feel happy. And I hope people can respect my decision. It's a very tough decision to come out this way. But I am coming out as non-binary. I don't feel I identify as male or female. I just feel like I'm just in the middle. And my pronouns are they, them, Korean, Jimin. Because I know a lot of people don't understand me, but I do identify as Korean. And I do look Korean now. I do feel Korean. I don't identify as British. So please don't refer to me, any media or anyone online, as British, because I identify as Korean. That's just my culture. That's my home country. That's exactly how I look now. And I also identify as Jimin. That's my Korean name. But
so Jimin is a Korean unisex name, and it's predominantly feminine in the Korean language. And Jimin is also a singer from the group BTS, which is a popular Korean boy band, which I think is probably where his real obsession lies. But he says he's non-binary on the one hand, but on the other hand, he's now Korean.
You got to get this person in here. To go through 18 surgeries because he has some K-Rock fantasy.
It's
K-Rock. It's unbelievable.
I need a cheat sheet of all these different things that he is, because I am completely lost on this now. I mean, we were talking about this earlier.
He's never strong in the pronouns.
Yeah, exactly. We had Boy George when we were growing up. He was in Culture Club. And I don't think he had any surgeries. It was simple. He just put a little bit of makeup on, grew his hair long, and probably saved himself 18 surgeries. You have to figure, what, 10 grand a surgery?
But Boy George was not trying to become a different race. He was just maybe trying to be more kind of like a eunuch. He didn't really want to be associated with the guy or girl, because he always dressed that way. He calls himself Boy George, but he kind of looks like a girl, but he kind of looks like a boy. And that's his choice, right? He decided to do that. And by the way, he made a lot of money at it with his music. His music was very popular. But this is a little bit different because, how do you function when you go through society and you apply for a job and you're like, you check the box and it says your race, and it's like,
that's why we got to get this guy for an interview. I want to see where does he work? Where does he plan on working? And this whole thing where he feels good about himself. And I need a before and after
at the demilitarized zone. He's going to work at the demilitarized zone in Korea.
This guy, he better have a lot of medical leave, because he's obviously in the surgery room quite often. Who I'd like to see is his parents. Hey, yes. he's doing well. 7 to 12 more surgeries, and he's going to be pretty good.
I want to ask him what school he went to, and did you go to the university system? What was the profound impact on your life that make you think this might be a good idea?
That's a really good point. And the thing is I was talking about this the other day. It's like, well, since this is a thing, transracial. So why can't Hunter Biden and Joe Biden become trans Chinese, since they're bought and paid for by the Chinese? Can you just identify that way, or do you have to actually have the surgery?
If there's a paycheck involved in it, Hunter might be on board.
Yeah, exactly. Then they bought and paid for.
Yeah, I think Hunter's been pretty close to the Chinese in several different ways, so he's halfway there.
Yeah,
but Hunter doesn't really.
He's a member of the boy band Chinese version, though, I guess. Yes. So why not have the military transition to Chinese? Because that's what the wokeness is going on in their military right now, which is to try to turn it into,
They're probably looking for volunteers now. We need a few good people that want to get through a lot of surgery.
Yeah. Sadly, with President Biden, you could probably wake him up tomorrow and tell him he's Chinese. He'd be all in. Oh, yeah, that's right.
I can't wait for him to go door to door. Is Biden going to administer the jab yourself?
You'd have to pull out the cue cards though when you did that. It's like, oh, wait a minute, what did my staff want me to do? Okay, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Of course, that's
they
what
told me not to talk too much.
Yeah, exactly.
But Matt brought this up. Wasn't there a former NAACP?
What was that lady? Richard
Dolezal.
Dolezal, right? Yeah, she
identified as black and was the head of the NAACP, but ended up being white.
And then they kicked her out.
Yes.
That doesn't seem very woke.
But isn't it interesting?
That wasn't open-minded at all by them.
But BLM is supposed to believe in all this trans stuff. So she was transracial. So what's wrong with that? I guess it undermines their movement, doesn't it? It undermines their movement.
If
because-
anybody could be anything they want on any given day, I guess there's really no reason to have all the strife based on skin color.
Yeah, it's
Because
true.
we're all the same.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
whatever we feel like being, whatever pronoun, thee, them, Jimin, whatever.
Well, you have a lot of self-flagellating liberals and progressives who joined BLM as well. And they were, the white progressives I'm talking about. They joined, and you saw them in the streets rioting in 2020 and throughout that. So
If things are so easy for white America, why don't we have everybody just
Why did
trans over to white?
that's a really good idea.
Everybody's now.
And that, it brings up a really good point about
but
the
then
segment.
that way, I mean, Elizabeth Warren wouldn't have gotten hired at
That's right.
at where Harvard.
Harvard.
Native American.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because she's Native American. But Brian brought up a really good point, which is if this is a trend, this whole transracial thing, which I think it probably is, especially on the progressive left, then at what point will, maybe in the near future, we might not really have a race, right? It might be just like the human race, which is the way we all believe it to be now anyway as conservatives. And we stop looking at people in terms of their race, and BLM kind of dissipates because it's like, hey, your race never did matter. Only you thought it did, but it was really about political power and power over people more than it was about your race.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always been in the mortgage business as well, and you do the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, and they changed that with Dodd-Frank, and we went from Hispanic, non-Hispanic, and now there's 32 different categories of which you can mark, and pretty soon. So if we're going this trend, why do we have to put anything at all? And we knew why they were doing it, because they wanted to make sure certain lending institutions were not discriminating against certain ethnic backgrounds or certain. So
But the lender doesn't fill that out. The applicant fills that out.
yeah, so they can put whatever they want, and as you know,
Can you check multiple boxes?
Yeah. Well,
I want to check the box that gives me the lowest rate.
exactly.